Hello, this is Roland. Welcome. Today I want to continue with what I've been doing for the last probably 4 weeks now, 4 or 5 weeks, on and off, not every day. I've been talking about the Sermon on the Mount, particularly the Beatitudes. And I want to read them again because it's so important that you hear these Beatitudes. They're just beautiful, and the depth of them and the power of them and what they can help you to realize. It's just, it's priceless. Now I'm reading from the Khabouris manuscript. Here it is, the Khabouris manuscript, which the Khabouris manuscript is an ancient text that was found, written in Aramaic, translated by the Yonan Codex Foundation. And it's exquisite. As I've said before in other videos, the Yonan Codex Foundation sought to portray in English what was conveyed by the original Aramaic. Okay? And so it's exquisitely beautiful. Now let me begin reading. Matthew chapter 5. When Jesus saw the crowds, he ascended the mountain. When he was seated, his disciples drew near to him. He began speaking and teaching them, and he said, "A heavenly attitude is theirs, those whose home is in Ruka. Theirs is a heavenly state." Okay, now Ruka means to be in the Spirit. Okay, Spirit of God, the Spirit from God. And the translators at the Yonan Codex Foundation, the term is so important that they didn't even want to translate it. They just left it. They didn't change it. They left the original Aramaic word in the English text. They just wrote in Ruka. There's a section in this book where they describe what Ruka is. But I'll just say Spirit. So now let me read it again. When Jesus saw the crowds, he ascended the mountain. When he was seated, his disciples drew near. He began speaking and teaching them, and he said, "A heavenly attitude is theirs, those whose home is in Spirit. Theirs is a heavenly state." Okay? Now, that's very powerful. I'm sure you've heard the Beatitudes translated with the term blessed. And it's a nice term, blessed. It's pretty and it's nice. And indeed, those people are blessed. But this is more powerful because it conveys something of what was originally intended. Okay? Now, to be in the Spirit, you see, before Adam and Eve fell, before they fell through doubt, through disobedience, through ambition, okay, making something too important and setting aside what they knew in their heart. I mean, isn't that what we all do? Before we learn our lesson, something is too important, and we set aside common sense, reason, what we know is right, in order to pursue what we want. And we become blinded by what we want, even if it's just an object in the store, jewelry or shoes or something, or a car, or something, or approval from someone, or something. And so we pursue it, and we set aside what we know in our heart, and we fixate on that goal, only to later discover that we gave up more than we got. We gave up what was really important, and in exchange we got just a tinsel nothing. Okay. So, and some people never learn that lesson. Okay, but some do. And blessed are they. Okay. But now, before Adam and Eve fell, they were in spirit. They were close to God. They had the image of God and His identity, okay, imprinted because they were His. They were His, and He was their Father. And there was no corruption. See, nothing got in the way. Nothing damaged the relationship. It was pure. It was innocent. It was wholesome. It was good. And from God, Adam got his identity, what he could identify with. He got his inspiration, his insights. He made discoveries. And approval and love. Okay? And even some sort of energy with which to live and move and have his being. Okay? I don't think he even had to eat. He was very close. He received everything that he needed from the Creator, including his identity. Remember when you were a little kid and you identified with Dad or Mom? Okay? Then later, somehow corruption entered in, didn't it? Some sort of corruption. Now, of course, your dad may have left, or he may have betrayed you, or he may have turned out to be a rotten person, or your mom may have betrayed you, or she turned out to be a mean person, or something like that. But let's suppose your parents were halfway decent. Okay, they were decent. When you were a little child, you identified with your father. See, your mom. But then later on, somehow some sort of corruption entered. Somehow your peers said, what the other kids said, what the teacher said, see, what some entertainer said, somehow that became more important than your father or perhaps your mother. Okay, but I'm focusing on father because father is key and is key in the relationship. Because father stands in for God in the eyes of a child. Okay? So later on then perhaps you were ashamed of your father. He wasn't cool. Maybe he didn't talk in a cool way or act cool like other dads, or maybe he didn't make a lot of money or something. And so you identified with the group, with your peers, with entertainers, with sports stars. See, strangers, basically. You identified with strangers, and you took your identity from the group, and what they wore, and how they dressed, and how they talked, and what they listened to, and what they watched. And then when you looked at your dad, well, he seemed kind of old-fashioned, and maybe you were embarrassed. See? So you see how important identity is. Well, but what the point I want to get at very quickly here is that Adam was in spirit. But when he disobeyed God, when he doubted God, when he made something else too important, something in the world too important. In this case, it happened to be the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which don't we make knowledge too important today anyway? Look at education, big business. Colleges, big business. College sports, big business. See? And we pursue, a lot of times we give up a lot to pursue that goal. I'm not saying that learning isn't a good thing. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying it depends on how you learn. With what spirit? With what attitude? Is it prideful? Is it ambitious? Or is it commonsensical and humble and industrious? You see, there's a difference. But anyway, you can see that then Adam fell from the Spirit, the life of the Spirit. He fell and then he became an animal. He lost what he had. And then he had to compensate from below. See? So you look at it in your life, how subtly very subtly, you lost what you once had when you were a little child. You were close to innocence. You were close to the Spirit. Of course, you were just a little child. So you were born first of the flesh. And so you had to grow as a little ego. Okay? So it's all perfectly natural. But along with the natural growth, somehow the outside became, your outside things became your reference points. And then you fell away from that bright nature that you once had. Okay? Well, Adam fell, and he compensated from below. So what had once been the flesh, had the earth, the material, had gathered around the immaterial. The soul had gathered the elements to make the human body. But it was it was something different about it. See? Something different about it. But when Adam fell, then he had to compensate in the flesh for everything that he had lost in the spirit. Okay? Even having to eat. Okay? And work by the sweat of his brow. And then death entered. The life cycle of life and death, like animals have. That became a reality. And then Adam had to reproduce so that the species could go on. He would die. Individually, he would die, but the species would go on. See? Well, that's what we inherit. That's the fallen, lowly existence we inherit. But then in our own life, we also experience a fall from being close to the Spirit, to that potential when we were little children, where we had brightness, see, and joy, and the spirit of discovery and the spirit of adventure. We fell away from it. And then we began to compensate on the outside, compensate with clothes, education, see, grades, athletics, pride. See, to defend what we became. Every time you fall, every time you take a step down, you do something you shouldn't do, you take drugs, smoke marijuana, you do things, especially things your parents said not to do. Every time you make the group too important, every time you sell yourself down the river for their approval and their support, you're degraded a notch down, another notch down, another notch down. And each notch down, you quickly adapt to that lower level, and then you compensate somehow, okay, for what you lost. So then you have a sense of growing in a lowly way, but this growing is dependent upon having lost something. And you compensate with pride, and you defend what you fell to, what you have become in your fall. So you see how corruption enters in. Now, because we are born of the flesh, okay, unless you find salvation from this lowly state, this animal state, okay, unless you find salvation from it, unless you in Acts, the second chapter of Acts, I believe it's Peter who says, come separate yourself from this corrupt generation. Separate yourself from it. You see, because when the fallen self can only deteriorate. See, that's all it can do. You can maintain a status quo for a while and then deteriorate, because every compensation, every reaching to the outside takes you a little farther away from the life of the Spirit, which you have never known, although you were close to it when you were a little child, like I said. So corruption enters. So you can't help but corrupt yourself. Now, if you come from a decent home and have decent friends, and you're not traumatized and exposed to awful things. If you have decent parents, well, then you won't become very corrupt. You'll just be a little corrupted by pride and things that you want, and socialization and so on. But if you come from a rotten home where the parents are rotten, or you get involved with drugs, or you make peers too important, or socializing too important, or music too important, or drugs too important, or ambitiously make education too important, or advancement too important, or money too important, see? Then you become more and more corrupted. Okay, more and more corrupted. So, now this process of becoming more and more corrupted, falling away from the Spirit and becoming more and more corrupted, is what's called the second death. It's referred to in Revelation, the second death. Okay? And then there's also the physical death, which comes because all we have is this animal body. So unless you find salvation from this second death, from this corruption, by somehow finding an attitude, see, Christ in the Beatitudes says a heavenly attitude. You have to have a different attitude, a change of attitude toward the world. You have to come out from among them, not resenting them, see, but no longer looking for something from them. No longer looking to the world for love and approval and support for your pride and so on. And looking only to God. And then, see, so you're saved from the corruption. Then you can become a natural person, still with a fallen body that you inherited, but now with the potential of being born again. So this natural person, then you go about your business, you work and you have a family and you do things, but now with this totally different attitude. So you're not corrupted anymore. And so now you're just a regular natural person, but no longer super corrupted, no longer prideful and ambitious in the wrong way and degenerating. Okay? No longer that. So then, now you can be reborn of God. And his identity, his seed of his identity is implanted within. And then in a very mysterious way, just like in nature, you see the butterfly, you see the caterpillar go into a cocoon and then emerge as a beautiful butterfly. See, it's like a magic. In a similar way, within you, this saved person now looking to God, a new nature develops of the Spirit. See, a new identity from God develops within, and thus you are saved from the second death. Okay. Well, I was going to read all the Beatitudes. I ended up reading one, but it's good stuff. Okay. My name is Roland.